Good afternoon and welcome to all our participants. At least in Hyderabad, it's a nice, pleasant, cool afternoon for wherever you are in India. I hope you're having and enjoying equally good weather, and hope all of you are staying safe and taking care of yourself and your families. Yet another session from the stable of Keka and Heritage People Practices, and we have a very interesting session this afternoon. By the way, for those of you who would have obviously seen the poster and see that the moderator was Anjali Desai, and suddenly you're seeing this guy talking, no magic has happened. Okay, she's not been able to join today for some inevitable reasons, and therefore I have taken over and stepped in her place. My name is Sanjay Devudu, and for those of you who may have attended earlier sessions of Keka and Heritage, you would be familiar with this face, with my new COVID avatar, of course. And it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be back. And this afternoon, we have a very important topic and two very important guests and very special guests that we have who will be, talking to us more about women, family, and household. It's not about, work, family, and household. It's not about work from home anymore. So it's an important topic, especially in the Indian context, at least as I see it. And we'll talk more about that very soon. So on that note, very warm welcome to our guests, Aparna and Hema. Welcome to this session. And we are so happy to have you here. And as a quick introduction of the two special guests, they are our heroines of this afternoon, and the heroines being the heroines of the book that they have authored called Unspoken Heroines. And it's a very special book, and they have focused on it basically focuses on the stories of women professionals who have gone through various struggles, various obstacles, and yet come out, very, very successful and doing very well. As you can see on the screen now, Unspoken Heroines, and they walk amongst us. So these are not some special gift of God to womankind who are specially sent to give examples. They are ordinary people like us, and it is their stories which have been captured brilliantly by Aparna and Hema. And both of them have their own experience of having been part of corporates and being professional trainers. Hema comes with over 20 years of experience, having been a corporate banker, and subsequently for the last 10, 12 years, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Hema, as a professional trainer, facilitator, a leadership coach. And similar is the background that Aparna comes from, having done some corporate stints and then moving in as a freelance professional leadership trainer. Extensive experience of having trained thousands of people across the best of companies that you can think of, and their experience collectively, I think, speaks volumes of the effort that has gone into producing this book, and of course their own experiences of having trained professionals all across the globe. So on that note, I think let our participants are looking forward to an interesting one. So let me start with you, Aparna. So it's very interesting. The book is beautifully written. So I have already read the book, so I can say that confidently. So how did this come about? How did this idea come about? How did both of you get together? And what prompted you to choose this topic?
Okay. Hema and I come from similar backgrounds, as in not only are we trainers, but we also belong to the same subsect, and we have been raised to the same value system. So it was, I think, destiny that we should meet. We met in a training session in Bangalore about 10 years ago, 2010 to be precise. And we hit it off, as they say, in the training session. It was for 1.5 days by a trainer from New Zealand, Hema, right? So we met there, and then thereon the connection has been over phone, over laptop, etc. And we've had reminiscences, recollections about our training experiences. One of such conversations, we were pleasantly surprised to see that we both share a common item in our bucket list, that of wanting to be a published author. So as we found that that we both have that same interest, we said, why not explore it together? And obviously, being trainers, the first choice that came to us as topic would be was probably in the leadership domain. And then from there we moved on to, so let's look at probably training games. So in the exercise of trying to shortlist or hone in on a topic, we were also thinking of, let's look at a topic which would be probably pertinent for a wider cross section of people and not just limited to executives or leaders, things like that. In that process, we were saying, why not look at stories about women? And as women trainers being in this domain, why not chronicle experiences of women? And we were both categorical that we didn't want to chronicle stories of people that have already, of ladies that have already been told or shared. So that's done and dusted. So let's look at something different. And that's how the thought about chronicling stories of women, because we have come across so many of them, our mothers being examples, our siblings and others being examples, that there are enough and more stories that we can cover, who probably have a much better, a much wider, a much more poignant tale to tell. And that's how the idea of the story began. And funnily enough, as trainers, we found that this remote working happened in 2015 when COVID was not even there in the vicinity. And our collaboration happened entirely over phone and laptop. So that's how the story idea began. That's how it developed and came to fruition. In that 1.5, 2 years, or 3 years that it took for us to write and bring out the book took 4 years actually. In the 2 years that we actually wrote, we have never actually met each other face to face. So wow. It was always technology. So yeah, so funnily, Hyderabad and Pune also share 6 degrees, close to 6 degrees of separation longitudinally. So that's the difference. That's and the similarity. I mean, lots to speak. So to answer your question, that's what spurred us on.
Excellent.
And just an interesting tidbit: whenever Aparna has come to Hyderabad, I've not been available. Whenever I have gone to Pune, intermittently in between, she has not been there. Like she's traveling or I'm traveling. And ultimately, I think beginning of the journey was 2010 when we met. We met finally after the book was, like, we had got the manuscript finished.
So, yes. Tongue in cheek, should I say well planned?
So, I think it's a matter of coincidence and destiny. Imagine meeting somebody who shares, whose love for life is like yours, who shares a similar value system, thoughts, even in terms of family backgrounds. It was pretty interesting.
Excellent. So, Aparna, you mentioned, about having seen women folk around you who had varied experiences, and then, of course, both your stints itself in terms of your experience, having observed people in the corporate world, in the working world. So, Hema, what were some of the feelings and emotions that were going through when you were actually talking to these people, or even before that? How did you come about choosing these heroines?
Okay. So the journey was quite interesting, Sanjay, because when we started, we just knew some people whom we've heard of, who had some stories. Mm-hmm. So we kind of decided we'll pick up stories with varied, degrees of problems. So one key message for us was there is no problem that's big or small. And if everyone comes with different shades of problems. So we kept our thought process open in terms of identifying the heroines. Then what we did was, it was a long journey, and in fact, the 14 that have finally come out has been a process of filtration, because we were referred, we came to know of somebody, as we were talking, we'd say, hey, listen, why don't we chronicle so and so story? Let's try. So in that journey, we've had people telling us, no, I don't want to share. It's all done and dusted. Or I had problems earlier, but now things have settled, so I don't want to talk about it.
Okay.
Some of the heroines have talked to us and said, listen, everything's okay now in my family and I don't want my names coming out. So we've, with their, with permission, we've used real names or pseudonyms. And also in certain, maybe the name is the same, but the place, like a Bangalore would have become a Bombay or a Hyderabad. So that was our journey. And it came through people we knew, word of mouth reference, somebody connecting us to a third person. But all the stories are personally, like each of those heroines has been personally interviewed by us.
Excellent.
And many times over. So we do
Very,
a first cut, bounce
story.
it off.
Yeah.
And then, for my story, Aparna will comment, and for her story, I would comment to say, hey, listen, this part of it is not coming out right. So can you go back to your heroine and check a little more? So go back and forth and get back and forth. And what
Humongous
we also
effort.
did, and ultimately we also sounded off the stories, even if they didn't agree to share their name. We sounded off the stories. We sent the draft stories to the heroines and said, can you just go through the chronicle and see if we've got the thing right? So somewhere people will say, listen, actually my brother didn't say this, or my mother didn't say this, and can you change the statement? Even if it was not real names, the connect was established. So I hope that answers your question in terms of how the stories came about.
Definitely. I was just trying to give a flavor of possibly potential dreamers and authors in the participant group of how to go about, or how does one go about, if they have a dream of writing a book and they have a theme in mind as to how exactly one goes about it. And this was this is an extremely sensitive and important topic. And so therefore it was interesting to know the background. So
I'd also like to add for the
just please.
1 second. Yeah, Sanjay, for the 14 stories which came out, I think we had to drop about 4 or 5 stories after writing the complete thing, because ultimately, just before we got the final permission, some women backtracked and said, no, I don't want my story published at all. Aparna will probably throw a little more light on that.
Yeah.
Sure.
For whatever reason, despite identities being changed, I suppose it's seeing it in black and white is very, very forceful. And for whatever reason, they didn't want it to go out to the larger space. So we respected that. So we do have 3 or 4 stories, like Hema said, which we have not included consciously.
I'm sure, because it's a sensitive thing also, so people could have probably felt a bit uncomfortable at the end. So, which is fair enough.
Right.
So, so Aparna, what were some of the emotions that both of you were probably feeling when you were hearing these experiences? How did it go about? Especially, and I ask this from the context of, with all due respect, of women kind of being sidelined, if I may, or still, despite all the successes that many women professionals over the world have seen, it's still that one step lower kind of a situation. So, and you having experienced that, or rather not personally, I mean to say, but having seen that in the corporate world and listening to these stories, what were some of the emotions that were, feelings and emotions that you were going through?
For me, the first and foremost was awe, because it's something so personal that when it comes out and people are willing to share their stories, it's really fascinating and very inspiring. The second thing is, I'm very, very thankful, and I'm sure Hema speaks for me too when I say that we are very thankful that they allowed us to peep into their lives. It takes a great deal of courage to come out with those stories, and we are very thankful to that. We are also thankful, and we realize that more and more in the journey is that what privileged lives we lead. I mean, we have had our battles, but some of the stories are so inspiring that it makes us reflect that, it's not that difficult a battle that we have had compared to some of our heroines. So that's the kind of introspection, reflection that kept happening, with us, with me especially, when I went on this journey.
Hema?
To add to that, one of the things is we all have our opinions. The moment we face a situation, whether it's personal or somebody else's situation, the immediate thing that comes to us is our judgment clouding our reaction. So one of the biggest learnings for me, and I consider myself pretty strong-headed in terms of certain thoughts I have, the ability to look at things without judgment, and not letting yourself be swayed by certain judgments is very, very important. I'll give you an example, and please permit me to read a paragraph from one of my stories, one of our stories. This is one of the stories of a lady called Minakshi, and the story chronicles how she lost her son and then went in for a second conception, despite the fact that they were older. And people usually don't think of that. And she had twins, and that there was a lot of highs and lows. Imagine losing your only son. But then what she said was really interesting, because she said one of the family, one of the friends who were close circles of friends, did not contact them during the years of grief. And later, after a few years, they kind of got back in touch. But what was amazing was Meenakshi was not judgmental about the entire thing. And she actually says, don't judge people, because rather than labeling people, it would be important to understand another's point of view and what they are going through, and avoid being judgmental. So to me, a statement like that was like, it shook me. So that was an amazing lesson. And the second is, each of us reacts to problems, big or small, in our own different ways. And today there's a lot of talk about mental health, and something as simple as not having time for myself, or not being able to watch my watch something is triggering people. So there is technically no problem that's big or small. Each one's framework has their own way of responding to situations. Some have battled loss of family. For some, it is something simple, like losing, I don't know, there's actually nothing simple there. But each one reacts differently, and that was a realization for us. And the third is, another big lesson and big emotion is, whatever be the family support, whoever is there as your trusted buddy, family, whatever, you're in it alone. Till you get this part of it sorted, and you face it with resilience, nothing happens. So these were, I think, amongst a lot of other takeaways, these were three things which hit me. And I think that's what connects people to the heroines, to what's happening in the real world.
Very nice. Excellent. So talking of the real world, now let me just bring the context to the real world and the corporate world, since we are talking about women and their stories, and the perseverance, the resilience, and the strength, the mental and physical strength to handle multiple situations. How much of a context do you think this has in terms of what the women, because a lot of the pre-COVID stories of women professionals being able to multitask and handle home, work, and the family. And I differentiate between home and family, because running the home is one thing, managing family members and kids and spouses is another thing. So from that perspective, how much of these stories do you think resonate with what women professionals are facing in the post-COVID era that we are undergoing, or the COVID era that we are experiencing now? Work from home and work, family, and household perspective.
Aparna, you want to go first?
Okay, so I would say, while the stories are personal, the application is far-reaching, even in the corporate world. Because, for example, we were looking at values that we can showcase through these stories. which are not, consciously we said we don't want to replicate those values, because each heroine would also show this, would also show that, but primarily what is it that is of import for all of us as readers. So stories like, for example, the first story in the book is about a heroine called Amanita. And the value that she brought out in her life story that she shared with me is that it's all about planning and organizing. And that applies so minutely to the corporate world, whether we are in face-to-face kind of environment, or the COVID kind of, more so in the COVID phase, I would say, because you are actually now juggling household matters, family and children and things like that too. So her thing about having a supporting network, a support system at home, as well as being very planned and organized and scheduling, was something that I found so relevant even to today's context.
Right.
And
Right.
another story about Hannah, in that it's all about her self-confidence and determination. And as women, when we are juggling multiple roles, it's also about having that determination to see through, despite whatever challenges you may have at home. We may have even bandwidth issues, but still the meeting has to go on. We may have a family member who's sick, but still we need to see it through. And then having that wherewithal to say that it is there in me for me to take it forward. So that confidence. So another example would be probably Pramila, and she is actually my domestic helper. And a fantastic life story that she has shared, and it's a lot of lessons for me also, is that quick decision making. And she was faced with such extreme circumstances that she didn't have the luxury of sitting and planning for something. Her life is like that. She has to take decisions on the fly. It's also about contingency planning. So while she's taken a decision, it may fail. So do I have a plan B or a plan C, in my basket? And the underlying message that she gives throughout in her story is about courage.
Courage.
And not losing hope, having courage. Yeah. So these are some of that, nuggets that I would say would apply. Other things like having a very, and it applies to Hema and me also. We both are completely different in the way we approach writing. Our styles are different. The way we probably sit down to have that exercise going, our creative juices flowing is different. I may take the liberty of saying Hema is super planned and organized. I am a creative bumpkin.
Tell me
like
about it.
pressure. So I'll nice to know that. So I was telling Hema just yesterday that if a deadline looms behind me, just like imminent, it's tomorrow or day after, and that's when I get into adrenaline flows in, and I am supercharged to deliver. So despite that contrast in working styles, what helped us both was having that common goal, the outcome, the vision that this needs to be done. And that also are, funnily enough, some of our heroines, or I would say most of our heroines, have been having either loosely or very, very rigid goals that they have envisioned for themselves. Hema, would you like to add
Yeah.
about?
Yeah, true. So if you take the lessons from some of our heroines, like Nidhi, for example, a young girl who was able to see till a particular time and then actually lost her vision. But she didn't let go of her overall goal, like that was to make a mark for herself. So being steadfast, despite the kind of looming challenges you face, I think that's an important lesson today, because we're all facing different kinds of challenges. There are in-laws who are troubling, there are trust issues, like some of the women were telling me that when they are on calls, because their phone is accessible to kids, because the kids are also doing studying and internet surfing, husbands are actually checking phones to see who all are they talking to. Then even in terms of the husband's call, and I don't mean to get into a spousal war here, but let's say the spouse has a call, they lock themselves and take the call in complete silence without disturbance. But if the woman is doing that, then it is like, who are you talking to? I mean, what is so secretive about your conversation? And if you're having a networking conversation, it is like, acha, itna hi hai kya? I mean, this is what you do throughout the day in office. So there are interesting ramifications of the kind of challenges, but keeping, I think, being resilient, keeping that being tenacious, being steadfast about your goals is very, very important. The other story which I really find extremely valuable today is the story of Asha. And she's a classic example of what we talk about in terms of emotional intelligence. She, being the youngest of four siblings, actually took on the responsibility of caring for both her aged parents. And she managed to juggle her career as well as this. And while there were ups and downs, ultimately it's coming back to understanding the other person. So we have that. We have bosses intruding. We have, kids. Like somebody said, I love my kids, but I dislike them. So, the daily routine. There are also people saying we are seeing too much of family. Constantly, you're seeing the husband, the children, the in-laws, the brother-in-law, whatever it is. So these are all things I think which call for high emotional intelligence and also self-management. It's not just managing people around you, it's also managing yourself, which is important. And despite the madness, if we can invest that self-management time, I think that's crucial. The one story I wouldn't, it would be unfair if I don't mention that, is the story of Jaya. Extremely entitled, in the sense she comes from a well-to-do family, very well settled, and yet she had the compassion. Today we see a lot, like there are people requiring service while you may be well off. So can you extend yourself to do community service, to just go beyond, have that compassion and the courage to say, okay, I may have a comfortable life, but can I just go ahead and do something for society?
Right.
So these have been some connections that work in the real-time world today.
Excellent. Thanks for sharing those views. Which brings me to another perspective. We've been hearing a lot about in various forums, public, private, print media, TV, whatever debates about corporates talking of diversity and inclusion, of women professionals being promoted. Some groups have even spoken about a second career for returning to work women, all that kind of thing. But in reality, do you think organizations have done enough, or is it lip service, or or there is some solid action really happening? Let me start with Hema's views on this, and then we'll move to you, Aparna.
Sure.
So I'd like to take this in two perspectives, and since our focus is the SME sector, let me talk about the SME sector. I'm not talking about the Deloittes and the Cognizants, that rate. I'm talking about the SME sector. Now, if you look at it, and this is almost like verbatim from friends I know who are running their own businesses in the SME sector, to say there are two things. One is the women themselves, and second is their environment. Now, if you talk about the women themselves wanting to get back to careers, wanting to get back to, wanting to have work that matters, making a difference, all the things that we'd like seen in the environment. I think it's probably because of the cultural upbringing or whatever it is. So my friend runs a company which is, the requirement for safety is extremely high because there are audits happening, and the kind of products they churn out, anything, one little drop of something extra can mess up the entire line.
Okay.
So she says and being a woman entrepreneur herself, she wants to encourage more women being part of her employee base. So she says, when you're calling for employees, they say, and I don't mean this in any derogatory form, please pardon me, I don't mean to be politically insensitive or whatever insensitive. That industry requires that you shouldn't have beady necklaces or dangling earrings or even, your sticker bindis. Now, a lot of women say that, oh, no, I can't remove my Mangal Sutra during work, or I can't stay without a bindi, or I can't stay without earrings or, bangles. For example, bangles have been put when they were probably, 18 years and slimmer fit, and today they have grown larger, so bangles are not coming off, and they do not do anything about it. So one is the women's mindset themselves, and any work that requires a little bit of physical stress, like if you have to stand and do something, women are not wanting to take those jobs. They'd rather do a sitting job than a standing job. Now, that being said, that is the woman's mindset herself, and not anytime they have to extend, it's like, I have to ask my husband or I have to ask my in-laws. My in-laws don't like it. So that is an environmental thing. Now, while organizations are also trying, I think there's a lot more that can be done in terms of creating that environment. Now, if you see the average SME employee, they are mostly employed in functions like admin, finance, packaging, maybe packing, something which is not heavy duty. Even then, what happens is they become the primary bread earners in the family, or an important bread earner. But the fact is, they have to still care for the kids coming home from school. Or 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, when the kids come home, they are lost. The husband is probably not helping out, or the in-laws are probably not helping out. Or even if they are, then it is not a constructive helping out. Like the kids are probably playing or watching TV, homework is not being done, developmental stuff is not being done. So if organizations also could come in, like we were talking, let's say in Hyderabad, the GD Metla Industrial Estate or the Balanagar Industrial Estate, could they come together and have, like, not creches which are like for the toddlers, but centers, daycare centers where a woman can pick up the kid, drop them off till whatever time she's working, the homework is taken care of, the other stuff is taken care of, maybe a meal, and then they take the kid home. Things like that, because I think we are hit by multiple things. One is the cultural mindset, support of the family, and third is even the infrastructure being provided.
Right.
And similarly, SME owners wanting to hire, one, I think they should also invest in technology to help, like let's say a tally package where maybe somebody in the accounts can work from home. Instead of pinching costs, it's time to invest in some basic infrastructure to facilitate the work from home.
I think
maybe
that's
an
a very
internet
valid
connection.
Point. Right. Aparna?
Yeah, I agree with whatever Hema has said. In fact, I do feel that there have been big steps in the right direction, in the sense that flexi working time, some women are also privileged to get transport to and fro from home, pre-COVID times that I'm saying. And they have been, in fact, many women now working from home don't want to actually come on video for whatever reasons. And that's also been people have allowed it. And there are very, very, I would say a large section of SME is actually looking to train and recruit women because they are much more, the finer skills, the motor skills being that much more developed, and they are a lot more loyal is the perception, compared to, and Sanjay, I shouldn't be saying this in front of you, but that's the perception that, but on the flip side, like Hema says, we also have an issue where women need to have probably longer breaks because of maternity, because of whatever issues at home, and automatically the mantle falls on her that she's the primary caregiver. So when that is there, it's a mindset really, and some SMEs and some large organizations, of course, have taken big strides in that direction. In fact, it was heartening to see the kind of gender balance when we do our trainings, and you see that despite COVID times, there are lots of women who come for these trainings. I know there was one participant in last week, I just had a session, and it was all a virtual session. And she had her, kid sitting on her lap, and she was onto the training program. I mean, it's the new normal, and everybody is willing to accept that we need to flex, we need to bend a little to adapt, and that's happening. And in the larger spectrum, there's also a lot of focus being given to women coming on board. In fact, there are women on board organizations, in Australia and UK, it's very popular. In India, it's in its nascent stage. Mm-hmm. But women directors are encouraged to come on board because they give that much direction or focus to the organization when it is looking to also expand and move in that. But I would also like to say that probably, when we look at women and women who seek to be equal, with men, I would say that is, being very probably lack ambition. Why should we equate it with men? You can equate it with yourself or other
Absolutely.
women. So
Absolutely.
it's a perspective that we need to bring it about themselves. So I would say, like Hema said, it's we are learning. It's an evolving curve.
Excellent. So I'll just digress for a moment to take a question here. There is a question from Hema Shushmita. And she says, ma'am, I have completed my BTech and I'm doing a job now. I'm not able to manage my work. Can you please tell me how to manage work and how do I support my family? I think very common question that we've been trying to address for years. I would leave it to either of you. Who would want to take this? Please go ahead.
Hema, would you like to
Okay.
start?
Yeah, so I think what's important, is that, see, and I've seen this on a number of occasions where we are shy to speak up. So, I have a 5C mantra for this entire thing, and probably this is a good opportunity for me to start off that 5C. One is, I think as women professional, we need to start communicating expectation. Expectation in terms of what are the timings I'm able to log in, what are the timings I specifically need off. So I'm, though non-COVID times and many years back, when I was in banking, I had this employee. She was pretty junior in the system, and she was actually in a secretarial role. She was administrative assistant for somebody. She had a young kid, and she had this one mantra. She said, "Listen, I can come early. I can't sit late." And she would tell everybody the same thing. She'd say, "Whatever work you want done, if you're able to give it to me by 4, I'll complete it by 5:30 and give it to you. But I have to leave at 5:30 because I have to pick up my kid. If you are leaving it late in the night, don't expect me to stay back. Just leave it on my desk with a note. You'll find it on your desk the next morning by the time you come back." Like, we would all turn up at 9 or whatever. She always would come early. So I think, and that worked, because we always say, "Are isko kaam dena hai, to make sure it is within that." She repeated that message so many times that it was important. But the fact is, she delivered. She didn't slack. So if she said that work will be on your desk by the time you log into office, it would be with all the instructions or whatever.
So it's the commitment from their side also. Communication.
Absolutely. So communicate expectations and follow through. Let's say you are a person who would like to finish the entire house ka work and then sit to do your work. By the time the other person is ready, you should have planned your work in a manner that you're able to deliver. Now, the second C, but I'd like to mention, not in that particular order, is consistency of your routine. If non-COVID times you got up at 6, finished your cooking, went to office, and came back at a certain time in a lunch break, I think as far as possible, and I'm not saying it's perfectly doable, but as far as possible, stick to that routine. Get ready, sit in front of your system. And also, another part of communicating is communicate to the people at home that just because you're at home, you won't get 20 different styles of bhajis.
Right.
Or very very like the garelu and gara is vada Aparna, the kind of delicacies that you probably get on a festival day. Not on. I think that communication has to be made, and don't get into this just like when you were in office, you'd probably keep everything ready, shove it in the fridge for people to heat up as they come. Do that even now, because
Makes
you are
sense.
still working.
Makes sense.
And there was an article, interestingly, in the Times of India in April, which says women are actually going through a double whammy.
Absolutely.
Of work from home and work at home.
Yes. And that's the reason why we titled this session as work, family, household. All three are now combined together.
Absolutely.
And it's a big whammy.
Crucial conversations, communicating expectation, I think, is important. There might be people ultimately who will not listen to you, but at least can you say, "I've tried my best"? And repeated messaging will help them say, "Arey, isko kuch bolna hai, so let's stick to that schedule." So the annoyance of the repeated message, at least you'll expect people to comply.
Abide by
It's
that.
like advertisement.
Right.
Helmet penno kind.
Right. Anything you want to add on to that, Aparna?
Yeah, I would say having very clear, demarcated chores and responsibilities help. My own sister has this habit of putting up a scheduler on her fridge. And she has 2 kids, and both are not spared. So they have learned early. The son is younger; he's just 10 years old. But then, because boredom might set in, doing the same kind of chores every day, she has done a roster for a week. So after a week, the chores change. So if he's watering the plants one day, he's probably helping to bring the washed clothes inside another week, things like that. So having very demarcated responsibilities and very clear-cut expectations set right in the beginning. And I would say sometimes that we women are the culprits ourselves, because we have fed this culture of serving and then making this kind of wondrous meals and then trying to be the Wonder Woman.
Right.
So demystify that and then bring your family. And I'm sure that the bigger challenge is also that we don't voice it out. We expect the other people to understand what we are going through without voicing it. And very often the males in the house would probably not realize the kind of turmoil or trauma that a woman is going through. So what is stopping you from voicing it out, sharing that it is a challenge, and it is okay to be burdened, because then they will understand that it's too much and they'll probably take some off your plate.
Right.
But in the lead up to becoming Wonder Women, we take on much more than we should, and it impacts us not just physically, mentally too.
And I think also we should drop our passion for perfection.
Very good point.
Kitchen should be absolutely
very good point.
clean and see, if you are on a call and the vessels are mounting, it's okay, leave it. If it's bothering somebody else in the house, they will do it.
Right.
But you don't say, okay, mid call, I will go and clear up the kitchen and come back. I think we also as women, and I think Amandeep had that question in terms of, I struggle with female workers in their own will to excel in their field. So not only do we want to excel in our field, we are also wanting to excel in our field of housework.
Right.
So both are clashing. So stick to your schedule. If you were in office, you wouldn't be washing vessels at 2 p.m. You'd come back and do it.
Makes sense.
So stick to that schedule.
So that relates
whoever is bothered, let them.
Yeah, absolutely. And that relates to probably the question that Deepika is asking. And she says, work from home has resulted in people facing many mental health issues. How to combat it? I think you kind of answered that question in terms of the discipline and the expectation of communicating expectations to both family and your professional colleagues in terms of how you would like to maintain.
Sanjay, I would like to add here,
please,
that especially when Deepika is, and this was something that I was very concerned about, is the explosion of issues when it comes to mental health. In this COVID times, is that what is stopping you from reaching out? And not just with your friends, but with your boss, with your peer, with your support system, to share what you're going through, because you never know, your help might be there. There might be, of course, we as a nation probably love to give advice, but then it's up to you to sort out and decide which ones you want to take. I'll share a simple example. My mother is 82 years old, and she's an extremely busy person. She never watches TV. She doesn't have a cell phone. She's a social worker. And in this time, I found that she was getting kind of into a depression mode, because she could not step out. Even for walking, we would tell her, walk inside the house, 1 hour of walking every day. That couldn't be done. But then looking at her now, she has taken up a handcraft of, cross stitch embroidery. And she's now making cushion covers for everybody in the family. And when we post those pictures, everyone wants, so she's feeling wanted, needed, So sometimes you need to either or both reflect within and see that what are some things that are my strengths, what I love doing, some of the hobbies which would probably be a regenerative tool. Reach out to your peers, to your boss, to your colleagues, to your peer system, to your people at home, and let them know what you're facing. Very often mental health surfaces only when it is quite in a advanced stage. Nobody tells it when it's in its nascent stage, and that could be a bigger issue also.
Very valid point.
Deepika,
yeah.
I hope you're
while there are a couple of other
and I think it's also important to care for yourself in this madness. I think nicking a few minutes to care for yourself, which I think women got earlier when probably they were taking the bus or the metro or train, to say, this is my few minutes of, I could catch up on sleep, or I could read, or I could watch something I like, which is not happening now. Now, my advice would be to continue that. A few minutes, that could be any time of the day. But please make sure you tell people that is what rejuvenates you, and invest in yourself, because that's what's leading to mental health issues. And call for help. Reach out to friends, speak. We also, many a times again, I think it links back to our perfection to say, anytime we are talking to friends, we are only posting the wonderful dishes we are making. And that's happening in a lot of these groups. How perfect life is. It's okay to show vulnerability and say, listen, I am facing this problem. This is what I'm doing. My husband's calling me obese, or because there's a lot of, it may not be domestic abuse as in beating abuse, but a lot of these snide comments, that's what's happening. So reach out, speak to people. I think calling for help also is an important part of how to handle mental health.
In fact, to answer Anthony's question, Sanjay, where he has said, can work, family and household become the new normal and become institutionalized post-COVID? I think it's already, many companies are finding that their employees actually love to work from home. It gives them the flexibility, it gives them the wonderful time that they couldn't spend with their family. It's helping them relax in their own settings. It's them helping them to have a lot more control over family as well as work issues and things like that. So it's really a question of and I'm conscious of what Richa said, Lakhotia, that it cannot, as it can be taken as a negative too, and maybe a hurdle in the career graph and promotion. I would strongly urge, when we have opinions like that, to reflect and say, is there a different way that we can either voice it out or look at the situation? And as one sign of being very, very conscious of the environment, conscious of people, being emotionally intelligent, is that if you're going to do the same thing over and over again, you're going to get the same result over and over again. Can you do something differently? Can you look at rewording the way you approach a person? Probably instead of saying, why don't you understand? For example, at home, if you think that there is a peer who is expecting a lot of, improbable kind of outcomes from meetings, unreal expectations. So you could probably say that, I see that you have this kind of an expectation. May I know why you are so insistent that this should be done this way? Instead of saying, blowing up and saying, why did you expect me? I just can't do it. So how you rework, rephrase, relook at situations and your own reactions to situations would be a big help in these times for people like Richa.
So Jyotsna Sukumar's question, I think, has been answered by both of you. So Jyotsna, I think it's about both Hema and Aparna have addressed the question by stating, communicating your expectations, setting a discipline as if you were, actually going to work physically. The expectation should be set of the family members also, to say that even though you're physically at home, you're not there. You are focused on work. And same thing with the office guys. Once you had left office in a non-COVID situation, you would not be available for them. And that's how the expectation should be set. And the other point is on what Hema gave an example of one of our ex-colleagues, where the expectation was clearly set that till 4 o'clock in the evening, you give me anything, I will finish it. But 4 p.m. is going to be difficult. And living up to that commitment. And that also kind of partly answers the statement which Amandeep made of saying, if your willingness to excel does not really come forward, the whatever expectations you set or don't set, if you don't deliver on those expectations, I mean to say, you're going to fall back. So it's a mix, and there has to be a balance. But the bigger issue is what Aparna mentioned in terms of not communicating causing the problem, expectation of others understanding you as an individual without actually stating it. Nobody can read minds. We can read faces and understand there is something wrong. But what exactly is going wrong is something, we're not mind readers, at least I'm not. So you need to set that very clearly. And if
it's also a basic communication skill that we talk about in training. Clarify and confirm.
Correct.
To say, listen, what is
so
it?
I think that also answers
what's
the same
bothering you?
question of.
And
Sorry.
have I understood this right? Yeah. No. I was just adding to that. Go ahead.
No, I was just, whatever we spoke over the last few minutes kind of answers the question that Sudhir Suguru has. And he also asked the question of what are the best practices to ensure we have work-life balance, especially for women during the COVID times. Sudhir, I think it's a communication, understand, it's a contract, honestly speaking. If I have to put it in corporate terms, it's a contract between family members, the individual concerned, and the office people to say this is how the schedule is going to be. Because the way we are looking at things right now, this is going to be the way life is for the next at least 6 months, if not more. And many organizations are talking about it for the next 1 year already. They have committed. So we need to be able to work out our schedules and our expectations. So there's a nice comment
Sanjay,
from
one
Deepa.
thing I'd like to
please.
add here is one thing I'd like to add to what you have just said is that it's also nice to be a little assertive. And if the colleagues are pushing you down, for example, and you have already a lot on your plate, you can very well push back saying that, can you prioritize and tell me which are the ones that you would like to see addressed immediately? So you are now giving the ball back on their court. You have very clear idea as to which ones to tackle first. It's helping you prioritize, juggle your schedule, so you don't have to try and finish all tasks that's there for the day. So
I think both of you have some business
Sanjay,
opportunity here. Deepa says, I think a training program should be designed for men on how to work from home and work at home and respect and support the spouse. Deepa, I think you can, they'll organize a program.
Deepa specifically, we should have something called crucial conversations.
Yes.
And conversations not just with colleagues, but also conversations at home. So that will be effective. How do you?
So somebody had asked for best practices. So a couple of examples based on discussions and what I've seen around is, okay, let me start this. One is, I think work from home, work at home, basically when the manager does not have control on the physical presence of the employee, trust is an important factor. I started my work from home the moment I started my training career, which is 13 years back. So I have been working from home. So trust is important. And like when we collaborated on our story, though we had different working styles, what was important was the common goal and the milestone outcomes. To say, end of the week, I need this done, or we need to get this done. Whether you sit overnight on the 6th day and get it done, or whether you do a little bit every day, that's not my problem. The deliverable is non-negotiable.
Absolutely.
So trust and time management is important. Again, another interesting article, Economic Times article says there are two things where people are getting upset. One is these regular meetings which are FYI, for your information. Are purpose hi nahi hai meeting ka. And can we transition to necessary meetings for FYA, for your action? Please involve me only in those meetings. Anything else can be emailed, or nowadays we use WhatsApp or whatever else you're doing. The other thing is the small benefits, and if organization, like for example, somebody was saying they are getting into this concept of hotelization, where the organization is surrendering its real estate, making sure they work from smaller premises and timed according to social distancing. But the benefit is being passed on to the employees in terms of internet connection or maybe work desks at home. So can organizations also look at this cost benefit? Maybe invest in a tally package instead of loading your staff with
Correct.
Excel results or whatever it is. Then the other thing is, this was extremely interesting. One large organization actually gives brownie points, which can be later exchanged as a shopping coupon or something, if people don't send emails between Friday 6 p.m. and Monday
Wow.
8 a.m.
Interesting.
So if you, as my boss, or anybody, we are a part of a team, if we restrict ourselves, then we get a brownie point which can be encashed, whatever, Amazon,
Very nice.
whatever.
Very nice. Yeah.
So appreciate work-life balance and stick to it. I think that's important.
Excellent.
But that also has to come from an organizational perspective.
Absolutely. So I would like to take Rekha Oswal's question here and answer that myself. I think you have a very pertinent question, Rekha, in terms of how small or private companies support women employees. See, it's not, from my experience over the last 5-6 months that I work with different, customers in the mid and small size organizations. It's not always about money. It's not about what is the monetary cost that or monetary benefit that you're giving to a woman employee. It's more about what kind of, and a lot of the points that we have discussed over the past almost 1 hour answer this question. Are there any government policies? Can we influence any of those? That's a very long-term thing. It's like solving world hunger problem by 2021. It's not going to happen that easily. But the easier answer is, how is the mindset of the organization to be able to provide flexibility to its employees while they are working remotely? See, remote working, except for probably freelancers and large IT organizations, it's for the first time in their lives that many of them are doing that. So both for the organization and for the employee, it is something new, it is something different, and it is here to stay. So therefore, it's important for organizations to spend some, time thinking on how do we provide that kind of flexibility. It's not about money. There are organizations which have provided money for internet connections. There are organizations which have provided money for furniture, even table and a proper table and a chair, so that you put it in a corner and use that as your workspace. Those are some of the physical, tangible benefits that they have provided. Others have provided a lot of flexibility. If you have a kid, or if you have kids who are not yet even, probably 10 years old, then we understand that they have their online classes, that they have their homework to do, etc., etc. So they've given them time to say, you can start work from, let's say, 10:30 in the morning and work till about 3:30, and then come back and work from 4:30 to 6 probably. That kind of a working hours flexibility. There are others who have said 3 blocks of 2 hours each, you finish your work, you're free to go. There are others who have said you work longer hours, but work 3 days in a week, the other 3 days you're off, whatever. So it's all about the ability of the organizations to think of flexible ways in which, and trust me, it's not that one person has all the answer. You ask the employees, they will give you 10 ideas on how that can be done. And it's not about money always. So we hope that answers your question. And we've been hearing a lot of, the same topics around how do I manage, how do I do this, how do I do that. And a lot of the questions that have been coming have been around similar, issues or challenges that women folk have been facing. Any advice from, we are running out of time, so one last question that I would like to throw at both of you is, given the fact that we are going to experience this for at least 6 months, I would say longer, and probably in the cases of some organizations for a good time to come, that I cannot even put in a timeline for it. Any specific advice on how people, especially the women folk, handling the work, family, household situation, adapt themselves, change their mindset, change their thinking on one side? That's one part of the question. I know it's kind of long-winded, but that is from the women's perspective. And any thoughts for organizations to think differently and provide any inputs? This question is to both of you, one after the other. Aparna, you can start off.
Organizations, I mean, it's like a double-edged sword, right? It's also about how much can you do, and if you're looking at the breadth of employees to cover, is it feasible? Things like that to be taken. But yes, small baby steps, and into getting them to feel a lot more relaxed, saying this is going to go on for quite some time. Maybe offering counseling support, because women tend to get frazzled. And is there a helpline available that they can reach out to, which where trained counselors are actually there for them to say that you're not alone in this battle, and everybody is going through this, and we can do probably look at signing up for some kind of courses. Maybe it could be therapy courses, art therapy, storytelling therapy, whatever it is, whatever is your interest. I'm very conscious that for small and medium industries, it would not be the full baton of services that you can offer. But at the same time, I'm saying that certain things can be done like this, which will actually help reach out and make that person feel that they matter. And it is there for the long run, and it is in their interest, and we don't want to lose you. And having those kind of reassuring messages, and having the kind of connective support system built, ecosystem built, on the works front, that would help. Hema?
Absolutely. So I think at an organizational level, in fact, recently I heard about some lady having tweeted to Narendra Modi to say, ask the guys in the house to help out, or, some kind of a chai pe charcha message, or, what is Man Ki Baat message to say, ask the guys in India to help out at home. But that brings me to a very, very important context to say, it will take at least 2 generations to change mindsets. I think Anthony asked that question. We are living in a patriarchal society where women, though highly qualified, are ultimately stuck in this rut of kitchen, children, upkeep, and all that. I think there we should take a cue from maybe some cultures abroad, where right in the beginning, even today, the average mother feels extremely guilty if they ask their kids to pack their own lunchbox, or if you give the kid a broom and say, listen, sweep your own room. I think those are certain things, irrespective of boy or girl, if we start inculcating, then there is a participation in the chores. I mean, even in America, the women are complaining that the men don't do enough, but at least they are doing some part of it. It's not a complete vacuum, because the average American household doesn't have the comfort of a domestic help. So the chores are pretty much divided between the couple or the people in the house. So I think that's something that we should also start. And if organizations could keep putting messages to say, listen, are you helping at home? Are you doing this? And are you making sure you're supporting? Are you having conversations? Are you helping with your kids? I think that repeated messaging will also help. It's like what we are doing for COVID. Everybody knows social distancing is important, but repeatedly organizations, government are repeating that message. That's for high recall. The other thing that we can do, and I think as a society, is I'll take on that point where Aparna said you should invest in counseling and all that. There are common helplines where there are people can reach out. Let's say my organization cannot afford to have a helpline. I latch on to a government helpline or something like that. In fact, I'm part of something called the Indian Women Network, which is part of the Confederation of Indian Industries. And one of our agenda is to introduce a helpline where women can call and discuss various issues. Listen, I need counseling help, or I need a mentor, I need some advice on career growth. So those are things that are happening. But, for example, the SCSC Society in Cyberabad has introduced a helpline called Sangamitra. It was launched, I think, on August 1st. So, and they are inviting people to get trained in terms of, domestic abuse and what kind of help you can offer. So I think platforms for listening, platforms for empathizing. If you cannot do it by yourself in the organizations, then latch on to the larger societal kind of platforms available. I think that would be important for organizations.
And to add to Hema's point for Anthony, I would say be the candle in the dark. I mean, start at home, start with people around you, and culture is formed because of habits of people. And it gets prevalent only when it starts spreading around, right? So while you may be doing, are your friends doing their bit to help at home? Help women employees, women working at home, working mothers, sisters, whoever. So starting small, but then the flame gets bigger. So I think we have lost Sanjay, but we are also well past our time. So do you all have any other questions, or can we wrap up?
Okay, I think
Varun?
Varun?
Okay. Varun, are you there? Okay.
Okay.
Sanjay is not there. So I think, should we wrap up if there are no more questions?
Sanjay.
Yes, Manupriya. It's the mindset that matters, Anupriya. Yes, sorry.
Yeah, we
Varun,
can.
go ahead.
Is there any other questions, audience? Anybody wanted to?
Yeah, that's what I was asking.
Yeah,
If there is
just
any.
We will
yeah.
just wait for another 2 or 3 minutes. We'll wait for some questions.
Yes, right.
Sure. In the meanwhile, yeah, if you have any questions that you think Aparna and I can help out with, please feel to text it in.
Happy weekend to you too, Pavni. The book is available on Amazon. I think somebody had asked earlier. Yeah, so you can search for Unspoken Heroines.
So sorry, I kind of got cut off. And
Dropped off.
no, I was just saying on a lighter note before we close, for as part of the training program for the men folk that Deepa has suggested, you can also add on crucible training so that they get used to the work at home syndrome, I guess.
So somebody, I mean, just in jest, somebody was mentioning when the men in the house cook, they've all started cooking because cooking is the new fad now. It's not the cooking that is the process. It's the cleaning up later that the woman has to come back to doing, which is the headache.
Absolutely.
Completion of tasks end to end is important.
Thank you so much to both of you. I mean, it was a wonderful session. I'm sure our participants enjoyed as well. And for all the women professionals who are participating today, if you want to know more and get tips and tricks on how to manage your lives and your careers, I think the story of the 14 unspoken heroines will give you some insights. Of course, not all their trials and tribulations is something that we want you to go through. But in case you are, or you think that you're likely to get into a sticky situation, there are ways and means in which probably the stories of these women folk will give you some insights. So the link is up there. Please feel free to go and pick up your book and read it. We do hope you enjoyed. Aparna and Hema, once again, heartiest congratulations on the successful release of your first book. Look forward to more. And thank you once again for being there with us today.
Thank you for giving us this opportunity, Sanjay. Really enjoyed it.
For giving us this platform.
Yes.
We really appreciate it because this is a topic we are extremely passionate about.
So,
yeah, thank you very much for this opportunity.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Sanjay.
Thanks, Barun. Bye.
Thank you, Barun.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye. Thank you, Team Keka, for all your support, and thank you all for your questions. We've loved it. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.